Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Project Pro AI Monetization Podcast. I'm Binny, the co-founder of Project Pro. As you know, we speak with entrepreneurs and enterprise leaders on this podcast on what kind of real-life applications they are seeing with AI. Today, I have with me Lars. Lars is the co-founder and CTO of Corti. Corti is a leader in the machine learning applied to healthcare space. Corti basically has been providing decision support systems to both doctors and patients to help with things like doctor-patient interactions, suggesting follow-up questions as part of the diagnosis, treatment options, automating note-taking, and use cases like that. And before that, Lars also spent some time at Apple as a ML researcher. Lars, thank you for taking time to do this. Welcome to this podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm actually still an adjunct associate professor with DCU. And very, very excited about continuing researching while building this startup, because a lot of what we do is on the frontier of the research. So we believe that we should keep on publishing and get peer reviews, sometimes negative, a lot of times positive, but all the ways that we show transparency into our technology.
That's awesome. So how did the early idea for Corti actually come up, Lars? Like, what inspired it?
Yeah, I think me and my co-founder Andreas, we are coming from a background where we have seen the healthcare system from the inside here, being on the patient side, and we also have a family that is working within the healthcare system, and we can see hardworking people that are extremely experts at what they're doing. But we can also see a system that is under more and more stress, mostly also because of an elderly population getting older and older, which is great for all of us. We have more years to live, but we also do have more complications. Secondly, the complexity of what is wrong with us is also getting more and more complex, which is also happy news, because that means that we're not dying from simple diseases anymore, but when something is wrong with us, like really wrong, and we need to take these resources of the healthcare system, we need more complex treatments. That is taking resources, and we wanted to build a company that was focusing on trying to assist with the problem of strenuous resources within the healthcare system. That is basically one of the most, if not the most important infrastructure that we're having. When we're feeling healthy and so on, we don't care about it and we don't think about it. But if something is wrong with us or our family, then my God, we think about it every day, right? So we believed that AI was the right thing to go for when we founded the company. We still do. In the perfect world, we would be able to tenfold the amount of employees in the healthcare system and have 10 more doctors in every consultation and 10 more nurses every time they talk to a patient, etc. But it's just not possible. And it's not possible. So the second best option is looking at artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence can alleviate some of the burden that they're seeing, and also ensuring that they have higher patient safety. So found a company around quite simple pains. Number one pain being patient safety, ensuring that we keep on improving on patient safety within healthcare systems. Number two pain, alleviating administrative burden. And number three pain, making sure that we have the right clinical documentation for the right integrity of the healthcare providers, also called clinical documentation integrity, CDI.
Very inspiring. This reminds me of something I recently saw. I think it was Dr. Peter Attia or something who said that you might think you have many problems in life until you have a health problem. Then that becomes your number one problem. Everything else goes away.
Yes.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And, your users, which is the doctors and the patients, most of them have probably heard of AI 2 years ago. You've been doing this way before AI was cool. What kind of inspired that journey to kind of get into AI and ML very early on? Number one. And number two, in terms of capabilities available, what has changed significantly in the last 24 months for you?
What started? So my background is machine learning. My PhD was about deep generative models. So before anyone was talking about Gen AI, so I think that the big revelation within AI, a lot of people, not just me, but a lot of people knew was coming more or less. It was then an epiphany how quickly it came and how much it could solve quite quickly. That was really a surprise to me also from the advantages in using transformer models that was introduced in 2018 and the fast progress from that and so forth. So I think from founding the company, we knew that AI would be able to do much more than what it was able to do in the beginning. We also, it sometimes feel like we were starting too early sometimes, but I guess that's the right approach towards hitting a nice innovation curve, because that means that we're really advanced now. But we definitely saw the necessity of building AI systems for healthcare quite early, because we saw the advancements in speech recognition that was really making a big explosion in 2016 with the Baidu deep speech models. We saw the advancements in image recognition that was like really advanced by ImageNet, introduced in 2012. I'm just going through the years, like a lot have happened throughout the years in terms of showing those indications. In terms of what has happened in the last 24 months, I think that was your question, right? The secondary one. A lot. I think that let me say it like this: a lot, and still not that much, because we're seeing from the large language modeling side that we're the architectures that we're building on are more or less very stringently similar to what we're used to. We're seeing more complexity, that they're able to solve more complexity, but it seems like almost a linear scale right now. However, I think that where we have seen the biggest breakthrough is the DeepSeek announcement, where we have learned a lot from how those models were trained in our application use case. We're learning a lot from open source, and it's fantastic to see the open source market really explode. I think Hugging Face needs a lot of kudos for that in the market. DeepSeek was still quite an interesting insight, because in no offense, like the best research breakthroughs are when the simple things actually really work, and they showed some quite simple things actually really work, and that was impressive for us, and we really jumped on that bandwagon and training the large language model in that way, and have gotten a lot of learnings from that.
Fascinating, very interesting. And to your point about transformers have been there for a while, and the underlying architecture of the current generative models is also transformers. And everybody was surprised at how fast this happened. So what do you think was the missing ingredient before this thing suddenly happened? Was it ambition? Or was it money? Or, I mean, I guess ambition and money are related. If somebody's ambitious, then they say, okay, I'm going to put $5 billion on training this. Do you think it was ambition, or was there also a technological breakthrough that coincided with the ambition in the last 2-3 years that enabled what happened now?
There's been a lot of incremental breakthroughs throughout the time here, and it's so fun to be a part of it, and it's so fun to contribute and also to learn. Following the Neural Information Processing Systems Conference, the International Conference of Machine Learning, in the International Conference of Learning Representations, all of those conferences, so much new is happening all of the time. I think that to just dumb it down from my pure logic, I think that the first ones that were brave enough to go big, it seemed like going big like that, it really worked.
I see.
And that sounds easier when you say it than it is, but it's like the fog, right? Like for the ones that knows about gradient descent, like you take one step, and that's your learning rate somewhere, right? And everything like beyond that one step or beyond before you take the step is a fog, and you can only see the hill going down and so forth, right? And that's how it feels, right? So taking that step is a major accomplishment to go big, and I think that it surprised a lot of us, at least me, that big could actually show such amazing representation learning inside these models for them to actually be able to compute such fantastic insights. I think first and foremost, I've learned how simple some of the human tasks that we're trying to solve are. In fact, good learning. Because like sitting and writing the 10th job posting on online is probably not what you do best as a human being, right? Or sitting and analyzing the papers and so forth, like that barrier is getting higher and higher, and it's quite impressive with the deep research models and all of that. how high they can get. But maybe a lot of that is actually not that complex work. And I think that it makes us think and look ourselves in the mirror as humans here interacting with these models. What is then the complex part of the work? And maybe that's the last 5% and not the last 20%.
Very, very, very insightful. At Corti, I mean, could you maybe help us understand who are the users and the stakeholders? And you did mention 3 categories of problems. And how does a Corti product solve that today?
Yeah. So basically, we first and foremost provide APIs. We provide APIs to developers. It has been a journey to get there because we needed to, before, like our journey has been that we need to prove that AI could actually be helpful in healthcare. And I'm saying it like that because there was a barrier that we needed, or a chasm that we needed to cross here. Then we need to build applications for that within domains, and we proved that with our capabilities. Then after that, we believed that, okay, now the market is ready and all of that. So we went into the infrastructure play, all the AI models and so on we had created in the application side. We made available through an API layer.
Okay.
And to sell to big software vendors within healthcare or startups that want to create a healthcare application and so on. And all of the models and all the endpoints that we're showing to the healthcare domain are very, very targeted towards the 3 pains still. So and those endpoints that we target are, like, for instance, speech recognition. If you don't understand what's inside the dialogue within the words, then the downstream task is getting really, really difficult. Healthcare is definitely not a solved problem within speech recognition. There are hundreds of thousands of medical terms that keep on being updated. They're long and difficult to understand. If you miss something, then again, it has a big implication. Then we have text generation, so general text generation, everything around text generation, and we have it against templates, and we have guardrails around it, such that you can basically generate documentation, you can generate insights, you can generate referral letters and stuff like that. So think about all text generation use cases basically you can use against this. We have quite a nice monitoring. So we have this model as a judge also implemented towards that, so that we're continuously monitoring whether there are hallucinations and stuff like that. Then we have what we call FAX-R that we just released today, actually. So that's a recursive real-time fact generation, and FAX-R is listening into a consultation and is basically able to take out clinical findings live in that consultation, and that's enabling a lot of use cases, not just the documentation and so on and the post-hoc things, but also use cases within being a part of the real-time interaction. So when we talk right here, FAX-R is giving the clinical findings back. First of all, you can use that as insights for the conversation. You can also use that as input to another model that is then promoting questions you could ask, or promoting insights in terms of clinical coding and stuff like that. That's a good segue to our agents. We are building more and more agents. We're coming out with quite a nice package around the agents here in July that I'm about. And those agents are, for instance, for revenue cycle management. So the coding, we do clinical coding, ICD-10 coding. And for international classification of diseases, it's maybe 140,000 different codes that needs to be structured from a very unstructured conversation, right? It's a difficult problem to the clinical documentation integrity that I talked about. So we basically support the entire system. Also with the agents, we have guideline agents that are going into different medical databases of medical knowledge that can support the doctors, and you can create MCPs around it and all the fancy stuff here. So it's a proper LLM company that is targeting healthcare. And why can we target healthcare? That is because healthcare is so unique. It's an expert-driven domain, and it has so much uniqueness in terms of the data, the insights, and all of that.
Right. Very interesting. So you're practically a healthcare foundation model kind of company that others are building on top of.
Yes.
And the people who find the most benefit from it are these startups who are serving that space, or are these large Accenture and kind of vendors? Like, where is most of the pull for you?
Yeah, so let me go back to the progression or the evolution of our company, because that's going to answer your question. First and foremost, we went enterprise first because we believed that we needed to win the big enterprise customers to validate that now was the ripe time to be an AI infrastructure for healthcare. So there are several questions whether the development area within healthcare is ready to integrate with an API like this, and they have enough use cases and want to build fast enough, or whether we should allow a little bit and stick on the application side, right? But so we believed that we needed to go infrastructure for big enterprises first to show that we could win some of these big enterprises. In order to win those big enterprises, we also need to make sure that our compliance is of a high enough level, that we have all of the balances in place. So it's a really good test case of durability for our infrastructure. So that's what we went to market with first. What we have just gone to release is now also a self-service sign-up, so you can go in and you can create your own API token and get started. So there's a PLG motion now also going for startups that want to build whatever wild idea for the healthcare market, and they need an AI infrastructure that is a little bit better and built for the purpose of healthcare.
Interesting. And foundationally powering your model, is that one of the from the managed service providers like GPT, you take that and build on top of that, or is it a open source model that you fine tune? Like, how is that layer to the extent it's not confidential? So
no, yeah. So we're trying to as much as possible to be extremely open on everything that we do, also publication wise. Let me give you a quick download of the infrastructure. So we have the speech recognition infrastructure, and these are models that are highly specialized towards recognizing what is being said inside the dialogue. These are encoder-decoder models. What we're normally doing is that we train based on open source parameters first. We don't want to be yet another company that has to train on the entire corpus of YouTube or whatever we need to do. So we want to have a good outset to avoid a cold start with these models, and then we basically fine tune it to use that language. We structure the models differently and so on to avoid hallucinations. We have different components inside the models that are also changed such that we can be real time by design and so on. But then we fine tune it towards the healthcare domain and make sure that they perform really with a high accuracy. Remember that we have both the use cases of being able to predict speech recognition output a little bit slower, but also need to do it super fast for the dictation use case. So we have all of the cases where we need to be able to provide answers. For anyone that has worked with those models, the slower you have to be in the prediction, the more accurate you can also be. So the problem gets harder and harder the faster you're predicting an output, because the model has access to less context, basically. So that's on the speech recognition side. On the text generation side, we have various large language models. With this FACS-R release, we are trying to again publish as much as possible. We have an archive paper out on the architecture around it, just for this live facts extraction capability. We have 4 different large language models that are trying to make a draft on the fact, another one that is trying to find out how good the facts are, another one that is trying to rewrite that based on the learnings and so on, so that we have like several LLMs that are questioning each other. I think that's also what we see more and more in the space, that it's not just one LLM. In terms of what LLM that we're then using in a flow like that, back to your question here, the nice thing for us is that we can swap and replace as much as we want. We fine tune some LLM. We can use an open source LLM for another case. We can even use some of the closed source LLMs if they perform better. So we're internal benchmarks on all of our use cases constantly to find out what performs better. And at the end of the day, we continuously move our stack. If we have something that is not fine-tuned, then we continuously move our stack towards fine-tuned, because that just works better, right? So most is fine-tuned, some is not yet, because that's on the to-do to fine-tune it further, right? Then on the agent side, follows the same trajectory. You're going to see a coding, we've done a lot of medical coding papers out there where we're training large language models with a classification component on top. That's just another large language model where we take the base parameters, we change the model and all of that, then we put a classification component on top to make them classify. Our latest paper that is coming out is a compilation of large language models that is actually following the same flow of coding like a human. give us feedback on how good we are at our naming in our research papers. But a lot of different LLMs and a lot of different components of the stack. And I think that's the stack that we'll see for the future. That also allows us to use smaller LLMs for the more time-sensitive things, and larger LLMs for post-processing and so on.
Very interesting. So you're basically taking a process like medical coding, breaking it down into micro steps that the human would do, and then mapping that to specific LLMs to automate.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, medical coding is a good example where you need explainability and you need to have trust in the system. And one way to have trust in the system is to do the same exercise as a human being would do.
Right.
And talking from the engineer in me and that background is there's no QED here, and I'm saying that with the utmost respect here, because everything that like from the coding domain, this is a committee of super expert people that have defined 140,000 codes. Anyone that has worked with complex systems knows that if you define 140,000 categories and have an unstructured source to actually define those 140,000 categories into, you're probably bound to there being discrepancies, duplications, and right. So therefore, it makes a lot of sense to make the AI system work like a human being would do in that system.
Makes sense.
Explain the steps that we're going through.
Right. And a lot of traceability back to during evaluation and things like that also, right?
Yes, but and we got a lot about that. Facts is another example of that. Like it can expect these clinical findings similar to how a human being would be, and that allows the human being to interact with the clinical findings and be the judge. For instance, if they want documentation to be generated from those clinical facts, then they can be the judge of what should go into their clinical documentation. And what we can see in a lot of these ambient scribes is that they end up being extremely long in their documentation. And imagine if you're a clinician that feels now AI is here. I'm having all of these patient consultations. I'm spending 30% of my time on the admin burden. So I believe that AI help me. And then you end up with a document that is 10 times longer than what you would have written. And then you see the first mistake in there. And then you get the feeling I should read it every time. And then you feel, okay, I should read it every time. And then when you start reading it, then you start correcting it. And then you start investing a lot of time in that very, very long document, right? So everything where you can get close to the human process in an expert-driven domain, I think is smart. And the way to go to the human process is to be able to be real time and to be able to have the orchestration of a complex stack like the one that I explained here.
Understood. Brilliant. And within healthcare, I'm curious, the trade-off between going deep into specific areas like cardiology or neuro or things like that. Is it mostly general purpose, or are there benefits to having separate LLMs to go down specific areas there in healthcare?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The answer is to say it depends.
Okay.
There are cross learnings across domains. Those cross learnings. So what we normally do is if we learn about a new domain that we don't have that much experience within our stack, then we quite quickly learn through our monitoring, our validation. We have so much validation. I think that Andrew Ng was the one that said like, keep on creating validation data sets, like never stop, right? Many, and that we're living by. So we're quite good at monitoring what is happening in our stack, and when we learn about something new, so an anomaly here in our stack, then we can investigate. Sometimes what we choose if we find an anomaly in our stack, like for instance, a good example is that we had a specific language where our model was not that good within psychiatry conversations for many reasons, and we investigated further, we validated, we fine-tuned the models, and then we found out that for the first delivery, it would make a lot of sense to make a fork of the model to specialize that, and then we merged it into our other models at a later stage. That fork is giving us the ability to also test a little bit more with the end users and be more investigatory, and hence again why an expert-driven domain needs that kind of infrastructure, because you should and need to be able to do those types of tests out there.
Yeah, makes sense. And then on the end user side, for example, like an ambient scribe for a doctor, is there still like a human in the loop looking at it, approving before it goes into the system, or is it?
No, so everything has humans to as far as the documentation goes, right?
Yeah.
I think that it will keep on being like that, right? So
Yeah.
it's all about making sure that we save time, we make things easier. Back to the conversation with the patient. I think that people are so quickly jumping the gun here and saying, okay, now we have AI, now we need to automate. No. There are all of these steps before, similar to sitting in a situation like this. I would love a live feedback saying, hey, Lars, your point here was not that clear. And I could go in and glance at it and say, oh, yeah, maybe I should explain that again. Or about asking a question back, or maybe you get it in front of you in terms of the question.
Saying, yeah.
So all of those things, there are so many steps on the way to make it easier for a clinician to ensure patient safety, alleviate the administrative burden, and make sure that the clinical documentation is as good as possible getting into the system, right? So, yes, I think a human should be in the loop for a long time. I think that where we will see most of the human not being in the loop is in the hospital intake and all of that, and also in the data aggregation. We're working with partners right now that are integrating with our API for fully automated conversations, for instance. And I'm not a firm believer in a fully automated doctor, far from it. At least not with the current technology, but I think that there is plenty of room for patients that have the time, because patients normally, like if something is severely wrong with you, you have the time to talk about what is severely wrong with you or your kids or your partner and so on. And the problem is that the system will not have the time to talk with you around this. To say it bluntly, right? At least not at the amount of detail that you would like to actually share. So I think AI has a tremendous opportunity to actually be able to cater these conversations with the patients a little bit more and summarize that information that they retrieve for that, to show that to humans, so that the human can be prepared for the conversation, right? I call it data aggregators to be a little bit boring here, but I think that that data aggregation can really scale. And that happens in the hospital intake, that happens in the post hospitalization and stuff like that, where you can actually start having a lot of automated conversation with the patients. And I would, for instance, from a patient's perspective, I would love that, especially if I felt like the right questions were asked and I could give all of the information, and I get the secondary confirmation that the doctor had actually gotten that feedback and the doctor was asking into it, right?
Yeah, that'll be very, very powerful, right? I mean, it kind of frees up the physician from while a patient is sitting down, typing notes and stuff like that, and actually having some empathy and listening to the patient and asking the right questions. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. And just take a slightly different note, Lars, which is if you go back to the early days, do you recall your first few customers? How did you land? What were the challenges? How did you close them?
Yeah, so we started out as a research lab, and our first question was a little bit of a bold one, where we said, okay, could we build an AI system here that could do live augmentation of the healthcare professional decision? Long sentence, but it basically means that if a healthcare professional needs to drive a decision for someone, could an AI have a positive effect on that decision making? The reason why we wanted to go there so early on was because if we believed that if we proved that, we would have a good reason to really invest our livelihood on this mission of ours. We looked around the healthcare sector, and as you can imagine, that when we started the company, it was difficult to find out, like, first and foremost, find a good use case that is focused enough to prove this, and then second of all, what about the data? We had we didn't have the same advantages of open source models with a lot of parameters that we get started on. So we needed a lot of data to train these models and build them and all of that, right? We found one set of startups at that time. There was the what I call the dermatology startups that were starting in the domain that didn't have always as high of an acuity as other things, and we knew that we didn't want to start at the lowest level of the acuity, because then what we would prove would not be powerful enough. So we quite quickly landed at the 911 space, so or 112 space in Europe, or where you are in the world. So emergency medical services. When someone is calling in to get an ambulance and they have a condition where they are themselves in the belief that they really need help.
Yeah.
So Our first go-to from building the startup was go out and find out all of the research within that space. We quite quickly trolled through the research, found the agencies that we believed was doing the most research. Our assumption was that the ones doing the most research would also be the agencies with the best data for validation of these models. Because if you do the research, then you know that you need good data to publish on. And the nice thing about these systems is that they have a lot of aggregated communication. So any study or any result that we would drive in that system would be on hundreds of thousands of conversations and not only a very, very small subset. So knocked on the door of these agencies, and hopefully they let us in after knocking on their door 3 or 5 times. We asked them, what is your biggest problem when someone is calling in? So we segmented it even more. And then they said, when someone is lying lifeless on the ground, so cardiac arrest, their heart has stopped pumping, that's actually a much more difficult case than what you would think. And the engineer in me would say, that cannot be that difficult for someone to understand, right? That a person is not breathing, the person is unconscious, send the ambulance and start a resuscitation. When learning a little bit more, we sat and listened through a lot of these calls and trying to understand what it was. Then you learn how complex a stressful clinical encounter can be and how many signals there can be in it. It's a very difficult delivery. So
makes sense.
An example is my husband is lying lifeless on the ground, or my husband is lying on the ground. He fell down a ladder. He bumped his head. It's bleeding from the head. The immediate thing could be, do not move your husband. And is he breathing? So on, so on. Yeah, I think he's breathing. That kind of a dialogue. Then suddenly you're at a downturn that is a different case. So that was interesting. We got a data set. We trained our models. We validated that with a holdout data set that the customer had. They had researchers on their side to do it proper. They published research after some time. And we showed that, yes, the AI could have a positive effect live in the conversation, also being able to predict that before the human being would actually take the ambulance. That was fantastic. So that was our first use case going into this space. We have then later on done that with stroke as well, that is published in Nature Digital Medicine and so on, and build this as a support, like back to the infrastructure, a supporting infrastructure for general triaging for emergency medical services, especially in the US. Still happening. Our company is much broader now, but it's very much on the core of our beginning.
Amazing. Congratulations to everything you've been up to at Corti so far. And finally, Lars, as you hire and attract new people to your team, what kind of skill sets and backgrounds and abilities are most important to you? Really helpful to anybody listening who's looking for a career in AI ML right now.
Yeah, I think good question. I think that we have such a nice machine learning team. They are much smarter than me, and they are super specialized within their domain. Not meaning that they cannot go to a new domain within our company. That to a certain extent answers some of my problems. So machine learning is becoming so complex because you need to be able to understand math, you need to be able to understand statistics, you need to be able to understand data science, and then also general software engineering, right? A lot of our models, like if you don't have a good understanding of how the models are deployed, how they work in that deployment environment, and so on, then you're not having a good understanding of how to actually define the architecture of the model at the get-go in terms of actually getting it into that deployment format. Like, stream, should it not be streamed? When to should you have any indications that you learn in the model to actually make a closure of your stream and stuff like that. So I think that the advice here is get really, really good, and honestly read the books from the big Kevin Murphy's to the Bishop's books on machine learning. I think that there are a lot of good courses online. I think that the general machine learning knowledge is still so super important. Teaching you all of the probabilistic machine learning and all of that as well is super important. We use it in our everyday, and the ones that can really prove that and show that knowledge are definite hires with us. PhD backgrounds are helpful because PhDs are normally learning you how to think about a problem and how to solve it, but they're not necessary, so to speak. So as long as you can show that you can build and be creative, and being creative is standing on top of a lot of knowledge.
Right. Fantastic. That's very helpful. Lars, on that note, thank you so much for doing this. This has been very helpful to give us an idea on what kind of impact Corti and you have been having on healthcare. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.